Thank you so much for joining us, Cheryl.
Good morning. Glad to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a little while. We had you on the show a little while back, and it was a great conversation. You brought up some phenomenal topics in that conversation as well around connecting Alberta, connecting the hubs, which is awesome, fantastic concepts. And now you're looking to run into a position that you can actually hammer this change in really well, really hard, and run with it. So that's really great. You're running for mayor of Edmonton. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
How's everything been going so far?
Oh, it's been incredible. The best part about it is how many people have reached out to me to set up conversations that want to talk about our city. And every day is an incredible learning experience for me. And so I announced really early. So I was the first candidate. I announced in fall of 2020. And the reason that I did that is, one, I wanted to make sure that people understood that I intended to do this. I was serious about this commitment. It didn't matter to me who else was running. But I also really wanted to invite people to help me broaden my perspective. I'm one individual. I have my own lived experiences that are very narrow. And so I really wanted to live the city through all of Edmontonians that live here. And so now that's an ambitious task. But Edmonton residents have just been so generous with their time. And so every day I spend 8 or 9 hours having conversations with people where they're just incredibly open with how they live in the city, what they experience day to day, and what's important to them.
Yeah, you've run a very noticeably open platform. You're inviting people in all the time. You're doing regular sessions online to talk to people. And that's super nice to see. Like, it's nice to just have that open, candid conversation, get to know you, get to know your personality, but then also kind of see, like, you know, does the personality match the words? And, you know, we see that in politics all the time where you get a person talking and their actions don't really match that. So it's nice to see that you've been so open with that. And yeah, we've seen really good feedback. Listening to some of your conversations and seeing some of your posts, it's been amazing. And we're like, we were driving across the bridge one day and we're like, you know, like it's amazing how they had some problems with this bridge. And like, they've been building bridges since like the 15, like forever, right? How come we had these problems? And then lo and behold, you know, my wife is sitting there, she says, well, actually, Cheryl Watson just said the other day, like, yeah, like they've been doing this kind of stuff for eons. Why are we always reinventing the wheel? And I know that's something you bring up on your website a lot about just, we need to be more proactive and more, instead of reactive, be more proactive on some of these projects, doing our research and looking at what other places are doing, whether it's here in Alberta, Canada, or out into the world, so that we're not hitting these walls because we tried to reinvent the wheel. One of the big things that you were pushing towards is this chief accountability officer. Can you tell us a little bit more about that concept and just kind of your vision on the city that works together, you know, a city that works for us? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I'll go back a little bit and talk about really my desire to run and why I wanted to work in Edmonton. 5 years ago, I left Intuit, as many know, and I really wanted to bring some of the things that I had seen in other great cities around the world to our city. And so, you know, we've all, well, many of us have been fortunate to go to London or have heard about the tap system. So for more than a decade, when you ride the subway in London, it's a one-tap card. And so when you see these things in other cities, as much as we love Edmonton and it's incredible to be here, there's some cities that do things better than us. And so let's learn from them. So the idea of the Chief Accountability Officer plays that role, plus another very important role, and it's really knowledge keeper for the city. So the idea of this position is it sits outside of City Council, it sits outside of city administration, and so it's one of the very few positions like the city auditor that is separate. And so when City Council proposes an idea for a change to the city, this Chief Accountability Officer steps in and says, one, has another city somewhere in the world done this before? And do they do it well? And what have they learned and what can we learn then from their experience? And number two, have we ourselves looked at this before? And so Councillor Henderson announced that he's not intending to run again. And think of all of the knowledge that he has in his head about things that we've done before. And so you hear him quite often when council brings something up, he'll pause and he'll say, we actually looked at that before, and here was the result of our study. And so this Chief Accountability Officer is going to play those two roles. Is someone else doing this really well that we can learn from, and or have we ourselves looked at this before? So that's going to save hundreds and thousands of hours of city admin time where they can be best served doing other work that really makes an impact on our day-to-day lives every day.
Mm-hmm. I always talk about, we even see it in some of the presidencies in the United States and whatnot, about when the next leader comes in, they're always trying to tear everything apart. When I toured Egypt, same thing. The next king would come along, he'd tear everything down that the last king did and start from scratch. It's always like you're never taking those steps forward. You're always starting from scratch again, and you're wasting a lot of time tearing things down. So if you can find that book, like you said, that's already been started or been written, and build on top of it, we're now taking the steps forward and we're not taking that one step back. And so this is a concept that is, you would hope, is common sense in most cases. And if you can take the ego out of it, then we can just move forward. Yes, there's always going to be some things that maybe didn't work out the best and maybe we need to, revisit.
For sure.
But we don't need to start from scratch. Another thing that you bring up that I really like is, trying to turn the residents and the occupants of Edmonton into advocates for Edmonton. We've discussed before on the phone about Google reviews and just how you can get those really good ratings over the city, and that's by taking the good things that you hear about in other cities, which you're doing. You're going to the Google reviews of other cities and saying, what are these people raving about? Let's see if we can bring that here and have them rave about it here, or build on that, or make it our own. Tell us a little bit about that concept and what your initiatives are to make people feel like they can be advocates and want to be advocates for Edmonton.
The core of my campaign and the work that I've been doing is really, again, about putting Edmontonians first. Edmontonians at the center of the services that are being created for them. And so to that concept, many companies have recognized that their customers are their best advocates. And so a lot of the questions that they will ask are, would you recommend this product to someone else? And Google reviews have been born out of that. That's really the idea here is, how do we create services for our residents that are so compelling that they will naturally rave about them? They will talk about how incredible their garbage waste removal service was, and how efficient it is, and how well we're dealing with the waste, and how we're composting, and how we're recycling. And so they're the ones that are telling the stories quite naturally. No one's asking them to tell the stories. They're just so delighted by it that they can't help it. I think that we've all had that product or service that we cannot stop talking about. We love it so much. When you think about the services that the City of Edmonton provides, they impact our day-to-day lives. It's when you walk down the street, it's the sidewalks that we're walking on. It's the parks that we visit. It's our river valley. It's our roads. It's our transit service. And so if we took the view of delight in those moments about how incredible they are, naturally people are just going to start to talk and brag and be proud of our city.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, going off of services and building off of what you just said, now let's look at the economic, the elephant in the room, obviously COVID-19. It's a very difficult position for you to be stepping into as mayor of Edmonton in a challenging time. It would be a difficult situation for anybody to walk into, to be honest. So now when we look at the economics, especially with Innovate Edmonton, we talk about technology and making technology a real key factor for Edmonton's growth, being a starting hub, an incubator for businesses. Can you tell us a little bit about the vision you have for that? I know you have a lot of focus on downtown Edmonton as well, because we're so spread out. What's your vision for that kind of area for the economy of Edmonton?
Well, here's something that is so unique about our city is that we are a startup city. And so the majority, I believe it's around 90% of the businesses in the city are either small or medium enterprises. That makes us very unique. And so when you really think about what the engine of our economy is in this city, it is those small and medium businesses. They are the employers. They are the service providers. Everyone that you talk to has a story of a small business. Either it's someone that you know owns that business or they work for a small business. And so the core really of the prosperity of our city is making sure that we create the environment for those companies to be successful here. That as a city, we remove barriers, restrictions. How do we help them get started as quickly and efficiently as they possibly can? How do we make sure that when they have growth ambitions, that we're removing all friction from that process from them? Because they're the economy and they're the job creators. And so how do we make sure that we allow them to do that?
Open the doors.
That's right.
Yeah, you talk with when you combine what you said with your services point. They're happy to live here. They can have a business here. Then they're happy to grow here and move families here and so on and so forth. So those are all fantastic points that you've made out with the businesses, and you would talk about policy as well. Mm-hmm. With policy and opening those doors, like we were just saying, where are you looking to kind of take a more closer look at when it comes to policies here in Edmonton for businesses and for allowing these services to come in? How does that look?
Well, when it comes to policy, you're right. The second policy that I announced, Chief Accountability Officer, was the first policy. The second one that I announced was this idea of declaring a central business neighborhood. Right now, our downtown is a consolidation point for businesses. And so we need to make sure that those businesses that exist there stay there, continue to remain, survive. And so many of us have as well seen cities that we visited where I remember going to Kansas City in the early 2000s, and it was the first downtown that I'd seen boarded up. Now, you can imagine that it's much better to focus on a downtown before it fails than after it has failed and try and recover it. So that's what the downtown focus is about, because the downtown is one of the largest centers of tax revenue when you think about the consolidation of those businesses. So we all need them to survive. Our city's success really is dependent on whether or not those businesses downtown are successful. Yeah. So that was core for how do we narrow into a policy to really declare a focus in that area, not ignoring or discounting the rest of the city because it's very, very important, but we're all dependent on the downtown.
Right. Fantastic. Cheryll, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your vision for the city of Edmonton and running to take that position. That's super awesome. And good luck to you. And we hope to hear more great things out of you.
I hope to be back, Bryce. It's always a pleasure being here. It was great to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.